Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. This is Julie Rampello from Projetech, and thank you for joining us today for a one-hour webinar on Maximo upgrades and some of the considerations that you should be looking at as far as why you want to upgrade and why the time is now to upgrade. So welcome, and this is the first in a series of webinars that we will be delivering on Maximo upgrades. So hopefully you'll find that this event is useful. We will appreciate any of your feedback or questions that you may have. However, during the webinar, if you have any questions and would like to submit them, please do so by sending an email to info@projetech.com. And after the webinar, we will post the questions and hopefully along with the answers to a page on our website. And you should receive a follow-up email after the webinar today with a link to the web page with the questions and answers. Okay, so just a little bit about Projetech. If you're not familiar with Projetech, we are an IBM partner, and we specialize in Maximo, and namely in Maximo Cloud Solutions. Just real quick here, just a little bit more background about us. We were established in 1990 and are privately held. We're headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, and we were a 2012 Tivoli Software Award winner at the IBM Pulse Conference as a result of our Maximo as a Service Cloud Solutions and the services that we provide along with the Maximo Cloud Solutions. Our team of experts provide Maximo expertise to our customers that are in our cloud, and those services will also include system administration and help desk support for our cloud clients. We are also a Maximo trainer, so if you need any Maximo training and want to see what classes we offer, please visit our website at projetech.com. Okay, we've also performed many Maximo upgrades starting from version 4 and up, and we have found that some customers have some challenges with upgrades, and we'll talk through some of those issues during the webinar today. And so we were able to take some of those customers and move their Maximo versions up to a current release of Maximo so that they can take advantage of some of the new features and new technology that the latest version of Maximo rides on. Okay, so what we're going to talk about in today's webinar is why you want to start thinking about upgrading if you haven't already. Actually, this was brought up in a corporate meeting a few weeks ago where one of the folks on our tech team brought it to our attention that there, apparently Internet Explorer 10, there was a push for an upgrade on this person's desktop, and after the upgrade occurred, the user started experiencing issues with Maximo. So it kind of brought up a concern, and we thought that we should take a look at, what other things or issues are caused by the upgrade to Internet Explorer 10, which is basically the precipice for this webinar today. So we thought it might be important to share with the user community that there is some issues, and there are some workarounds for those issues. However, it's just, again, another reason why, if you haven't upgraded or are not considering an upgrade of Maximo, that you may want to start doing so. Another reason is the lack of Maximo vendor support. So if you weren't already aware, there's several releases of Maximo are no longer supported by IBM, and that means basically that there is a lack of vendor support, whether it's IBM or possibly Maximo partners that are out there that may not have the skill sets or the expertise in the version of Maximo that you're running. If you are on, let's say, Maximo 4, or one of the iterations of version 4, it's certainly been de-supported for many years, meaning there are no hot fixes or patches being developed or released for the product. No new features are being released. So version 4 was the last Windows-based application of Maximo that it still works, and there's many people who are running it, and they're very pleased with the application and what it can do. It was a very mature application. However, it is it's basically writing on old technology. So, if something happens within your IT environment where they decide that they're going to go in and upgrade some software, maybe the database software, for example, the version 4 applications that you're running may no longer work properly if something like that happens. So just another reason why you want to consider an upgrade. Another one of the things we'll talk about today are some of the new features in 7.5. So if you have not been exposed to what's available in this release, I'm going to basically touch on the primary enhancements or changes that have happened. And if you're not familiar with me, my name is Julie Rampello, and I used to be a project manager, consultant, and trainer for Projetech. And now I'm, in business development and doing some of the demos and the webinars. However, I did start out with version 4 users and worked on several of those projects. And then, along the way, we've had version 5 and 6 and 7.1, and now 7.5. So I'm going to try to touch at a high level on the new features of 7.5, and hopefully, hopefully I'll be able to relate it to, all the different versions or the users that are out there running on some of the older versions. And as a follow-up to this webinar, as part of the series, we're actually going to do a deeper dive into the new features of 7.5. So what we're going to cover today is very high level. And then we'll talk about how do you get from where you are now, depending on what version you're in, to the latest version of Maximo, which is 7.5.0. I believe 04 has just been released, if I'm not mistaken. It is a multi-step process, if you're not aware of that. So there are several things that have to happen in order to get from whatever version you're on now to the latest version of Maximo. And we'll take a look at that, as well as understanding that for the entire upgrade path, depending on what version you're starting from, for each incremental upgrade that you have to go through to get to the latest version of Maximo from where you are now, you also have to have the proper software versions installed in the upgrade environment. So if you have like a development or test environment where you're doing the upgrade and testing it out, you would also need to make sure that you have all the correct versions of the underlying software that Maximo rides on installed and available on those systems. SQL Server, if that's your database platform, for example, you must have the proper version of SQL Server for each upgrade step along the way. So if that's not something that's available within your environment, then you have to figure out how you're going to, cross that chasm and be able to provide an environment where you can actually do the upgrade within your infrastructure. Usually a major upgrade is going to be fairly expensive. It's going to be very resource intensive, and it's going to take quite a bit of time. And the same is true for a Maximo upgrade. So, it's an enterprise asset management solution now. Back in the version 4 days, not so much, but that's part of some of the new features that we'll talk about here in just a few minutes. So basically, having to understand and educate your project team on, how to do the upgrade, what needs to happen, what considerations do we need to look at, with all the new features that are available, what are we going to take advantage of now that, if we decide we want to move forward and upgrade. There may be some things that you've customized within your current Maximo applications or solution because those features did not exist then. However, they may exist in the latest version of Maximo. So that's where you really need to bring in some expertise around Maximo and the new version and what it can do, so they can kind of help you bridge the gap of of information about the different features between the different versions of Maximo, and help you to make good business decisions about what are we going to implement right away, what is something that we may want to wait for, as a future phase, for example. So getting your arms around all that is quite an undertaking. So from there, once you've decided that, yes, the upgrade makes sense and we're ready, then you want to build your business case so that you can get, the approvals that you need or the resources or the budget approved in order to move forward with the upgrade. And so what we'd like to do as part of this webinar series is Projetech would like to help you to build your business case, to provide you with information that is useful that you can take to your decision-making bodies and say, listen, this is why we need to upgrade. There's several different issues that are going on with technology and staying on older versions of Maximo that at some point, Maximo may just completely stop working properly, or certain features of Maximo in an older version may not work, things that could be critical, things like printing reports, for example. And I'm going to show you a kind of a matrix of some of those issues that we've discovered with IE10 and Maximo in older versions, and that happens to be one of them. So we want to help you build your business case. So we're going to provide you with the tools and the information, hopefully, that will be helpful. We're going to call it an upgrade toolkit, if you will, and this is all free resources. After the webinar, you're going to receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording for this webinar, and also there'll be a link to a web page that we have on our website with a list of these resources, and some of the things are going to be resources that I'm going to show you today. And then as we're going through this series of webinars, we will also update the web page and add more information to the web page. And also, we welcome your input or feedback. So if you have some ideas or thoughts around what might be helpful in you being able to build a business case for an upgrade within your own organization, then please share. Use the info@projetech.com email to send us your request or your recommendations, and then we'll obviously review those, and if appropriate, we'll post them to our website as well to share with the community. So this is the matrix I was referring to before. So this is just very high level, obviously, showing you the Maximo browser compatibility matrix. So what this is intended to do is here on the left side we see the different browser versions. And these are the more popular ones. The IE, of course, is Microsoft's Internet Explorer, and then we've got Firefox, and then Google Chrome. Obviously, there are other browsers out there, and some are supported, but these are pretty much the most popular ones that we've seen in use. So starting with Internet Explorer 5.5, so the blue shaded box means that, according to IBM, it is compatible with version 5.2 of Maximo. Same with IE6. So if you go across the board here, you can kind of see what is supported or not with each version of Maximo and each browser version that I have here in the chart. There's no shaded blocks, as you can see, for Google Chrome. So it's not really ever been certified to be compatible with Maximo releases. However, for the most part, my own personal experience has been that Google Chrome and Maximo 7.5 play pretty well together, but there were some quirky little things that came up here and there I noticed as I was trying to navigate Maximo with it. So it's not recommended that you use Google Chrome for navigating within Maximo. Okay, so if you have any questions around that, please, again, submit those to info@projetech.com, and then we'll try to provide you with some answers in a fairly timely manner and get those posted to our website. Okay, so specifically around Internet Explorer 10, some organizations are starting to push this upgrade out. It works with Windows 8. I know I bought my daughter a laptop for Christmas, and it came with Windows 8 and IE10. It's pretty snazzy, fun stuff. However, doesn't play very well with the Maximo versions that are out there. So what we thought we would do, Projetech wanted to share again with the community, some of the issues that we have found, and if there are workarounds, what those workarounds are. Just in case, if this hasn't already happened, and it does happen at some point where your organization upgrades or pushes out IE10 as your browser, then there's some workarounds, or there's just some issues that cannot be resolved without upgrading Maximo or downgrading your Internet Explorer again. Version 4, if I can just throw this in there, version 4 was not web-based, so you did not use a browser typically to access Maximo. It's usually a client-server type of situation. So really IE10 and Maximo 4 are not relevant. However, again, throughout the webinar, just, really, what we want to, the message we're trying to communicate here is about, why you want to upgrade. And version 4 is a really, really old version of Maximo, although stable and, pretty robust and meets most people's needs who are still running Maximo 4. The technology it's running on is very outdated. Okay, and if any of you are familiar with compatibility mode, so when you're in your Internet Explorer, there's a setting there where you can convert to compatibility mode. So by doing so, that seems to resolve many of the conflicts that we've experienced using IE10 and sometimes some of the older versions of IE or the other browsers. If you notice some strange, quirky issues after an upgrade of a browser, you may want to try using compatibility mode to see if it resolves it. So this is a list, and you will get this as a follow-up to the webinar as well. So this will be part of what we're calling the Upgrade Resource Toolkit. So this is a list of issues that Projetech has come across using IE10 and Maximo versions. So we don't have, every, intermediary version of Maximo listed here, but I think we have at least the primary versions of Maximo that we've experimented with, because, IBM's not going to release a document, at least not that I'm aware of, that says, hey, here's all the issues with running IE10 and Maximo with, by version. So we have to kind of just, as we go through and see problems or document problems or hear problems from our customers who are experiencing these issues, we try to document them, and we'll try to share those. So, if you are having, some strange error, or Maximo is acting, not rendering screens properly or not printing, and it seems like it's all of a sudden, you may want to check and make sure, it's not related to the browser. But this is a list, starting with 7504. For example, to filter from the list tab using the Enter key, you need to run in compatibility mode. Otherwise, that doesn't work. There's a large set of functionality apparently in 7503 that doesn't work unless you run in compatibility mode in your browser, and that has to do with changing statuses, select action menu options. The go-to menu must get to the apps from the Start Center. Adding and viewing attachments doesn't work properly, etc. Going down to some of the older releases, 6.2.5 and 6.1 must be run in compatibility mode, because the login page doesn't even render if you do not select the compatibility mode. And then on 5.2, you can run direct reports like work order printout and work order tracking, but you cannot run parameterized reports like inventory balance. So even in compatibility mode, which means those reports that prompt you to enter a date, for example, or pick a specific asset or location or site will not work properly, and must be run in compatibility mode for all of the other functions to work properly within Maximo. Okay, so that's it. Basically, like I said, you're going to get the list of the issues that we've discovered along the way of problems, caused by Internet Explorer 10. But what we wanted to do next is then talk a little bit about this end of support for some of the older versions of Maximo. So IBM will de-support major versions of Maximo typically around every September. And they give us plenty of notice, and let us know through emails and various communication methods and partners that the end of support is coming, and here's some, options for addressing, the end of support issue. So basically, what that means is IBM, as I said earlier, they're not going to create hotfixes or new enhancements or provide, help desk support for those versions that have been de-supported. Now, sometimes, there's an option to purchase extended support from them. If you need to, you can negotiate that with them, or you can go to a partner. That's something that, a service that Projetech also provides. But sometimes, again, as I mentioned earlier, like with maybe version 4, what we're finding, as we're bringing on more and more, younger technical resources into the Maximo community and even into Projetech, that there's not a lot of experience in some of the older versions of Maximo. They just, they didn't have that exposure. So, the experience and expertise that's available for the older releases of Maximo is starting to dwindle. So again, just another key reason why it makes sense to upgrade or to consider an upgrade. And if you haven't seen it already, there's a schedule of D-support for the versions of Maximo that IBM publishes. And again, you're going to get this as part of your follow-up for the webinar today. But I wanted to go ahead and just open it up for you so you can see what it's going to look like. There's actually a link on IBM's site to their document, but what I did was I just kind of extracted and color-coded the list so that you can see easily, anything in yellow here is going to be de-supported in September of this year. So, and this includes core Maximo applications as well as add-ons and industry solutions. So the list is comprehensive. If there's no date in the end of support column, then that means that it's not yet been, slated for end of support. If I scroll down here a little bit towards the middle, these are rows 30 and 31, well, 30 down, this area here are like a standard core Maximo EAM instance. And you can see, 6.2x and 6.1, 6.0, and 5.2. The 6.2s are going to be de-supported this September, and the others have already been de-supported either 2 or 3 years ago. Okay, so this is a comprehensive list, and again, you will receive this as a follow-up to the webinar after the webinar is over today. Okay, so I think I've kind of probably made my point and beat it up a little bit too much, but the issues that we're seeing here and hearing today are mainly around browser support and really other software incompatibilities. Again, I mentioned earlier about, if IT doesn't upgrade to, operating system or Windows or, the database server software or, application software, that could break your Maximo applications if, that isn't thought through, or if maybe they're not aware that, Maximo needs some of the older versions of the software in order to run properly. The vendor D-support that we've already talked about is obviously, an issue. No new features or fixes can eventually become a problem. And, again, the old technology no longer being supported at some point is going to be very problematic if you do not address it. So the solution, obviously, well, if you do nothing, then there's your high risk of failure at some point. Or, make the jump, go ahead, upgrade to the latest version of Maximo. Yeah, I'm making it sound really easy, but obviously, there's quite a few steps that have to happen in order for the upgrade to be successful. It is a project and requires great planning, practice, time, and resources. The steps must be completed in a specific order. So I mentioned earlier, if you're going from 4.1.1 to 7.5, you're going to have to upgrade to all the major releases in between. That may include patches as well for each of the major releases in between, as well as the database software. So it can get pretty complex. Now, IBM has written utilities, and they provide those as part of the upgrade applications that you're entitled to. As long as you're up to date on your annual software support and subscription with IBM, then you are entitled to receive the upgrade utility. Okay, I'm being told that I'm having some issues with audio. Okay, sorry about that. I'm getting a thumbs up, so I think I'm back on. So the utilities provided by IBM will help you get through the upgrade process. And so what the utilities will do is we'll check along each step of the upgrade. We'll check the validation, the integrity of the data that's in the database. If there's any issues, it's going to spit out errors, and there will be error logs for you to review. And then you can go back and fix the data or the issues with the database and then rerun the integrity checker until it passes successfully. and then you can move on to the upgrade utilities for each version upgrade. So it's basically a 3-step process for every version upgrade that you must do to get from where you are now to 705. Now, if you haven't seen this document from IBM, we call this the configuration matrix. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up, and we can provide this link to you as well on our webpage that we're going to be sending to you as a follow-up email at the end of the webinar today. But if you want to download it and save it for your own records, that's fine. But basically, it's a very comprehensive document showing you all of the platforms, the software, all the technology that is supported by Maximo across the version, or that is required by Maximo across every Maximo release, starting with 6.2. So it doesn't go back to versions 5 or version 4, but starting with 6.2, for example, on this particular worksheet, I can see what VM environments are supported, or application servers. So if I look at IBM WebSphere 6.0, I can see that Maximo Asset Management 6.2 works well with that, as well as WebSphere 6.1. Same with 7.1. So 6.2 and 7.1 both work with WebSphere 6.1. So anywhere there's the dot in the little cell there, that means that it is compatible with that release of the software. So here's your databases as well. Okay, so it's a pretty good resource. Again, it's very comprehensive. So we're going to send you the link after the webinar, and you can look at it if you're interested and see. The very last worksheet is going to show you the minimum hardware requirements for running Maximo across the versions, starting with 6.2. And you're going to see some of the other typically Maximo applications, including Service Request Manager. You might see some Smart Cloud applications in here as well. If you're not familiar with Smart Cloud, Control Desk, it is a fairly new release of Maximo that is really designed for, it's kind of replacing TAMIT. So it's IT Asset Management, Service Desk, and all that wrapped into one bundle, and it works with Maximo, the standard EAM Maximo. All right. And as I mentioned before, again, the Maximo upgrade software was written for specific database products and versions, and they were written for versions that were available at the time that the software is developed, which makes sense if you think about it. So when you do the upgrades, you have to have that release of the underlying software in that environment where you're doing the upgrade. And at the bottom of the slide here, you can see this is just kind of giving us an example that Maximo 5 and 6 upgrade was written only for Oracle 9.208 and SQL Server 2000 Service Patch 4. So that means the upgrade will fail if you use any later version of Oracle or SQL Server. So that's true along the entire way. So if you go from 6 to 7.1, same issue. So you're going to have to be on the proper releases of the database software while you're performing that step of the upgrade. And then all three of these utilities up here that I talked about earlier have to be performed on each of those upgrades. Okay, so this slide, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but this is to visually kind of show you the upgrade path. There is an actual probably 80-page document, I believe, that I pulled this out of that IBM put together, and they did a presentation on upgrading. Projetech will be doing a future presentation on upgrading, and we're going to dig a little bit deeper into this, what you're seeing here. But what we're trying to show you is, starting with 4.1.1, to upgrade, to get to 7.5, we need to first go to 5.1, and it's going to tell you, which patches you need to have installed. And then based off of whatever patch level you're at, there may be, a different roadmap for, how you get to the next release. So it goes into quite a bit of detail here visually for us. We can see the middle column here has to do with the database software and which versions you need to have while you're doing that particular upgrade. So for 5.1 to 6.2, we need Oracle 9.208, again, SQL 2000 Service Patch 4. And if you move to the, the 6 upgrades, then that's where, IBM acquired DB2. So at that point, they brought in DB2 as another option for Maximo database platform, in addition to SQL Server and Oracle. So these are the versions supported by Oracle and SQL for that particular upgrade step, and then same for 6.2 and 7.1, et cetera. So, and then the WebSphere is our last column, so that's the application software that Maximo needs for the Windows-based applications. So it wasn't, it was pretty much not applicable in version 4, so that's why you see no web server supported. But once you got to 5, then that's when the software started to be built on the WebSphere application software. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the new features of 7.5. And again, this is going to be at a high level, and we're going to do another follow-up with a deeper dive into the new features of Maximo. And these are going to be more, the user applications as well as some of the administrative applications we'll take a look at in the future webinar. And any time, if you're interested in a personalized demo, or if you want to, just kick the tires yourself without having, having to talk to anybody, if you go to Projetech's website, which is projetech.com, you'll see on the right side of the screen that you can request a free trial, and then we need a valid email address, and then what will happen is you'll get a information from, it'll actually come from our Maximo trial application that we've got available in our cloud. You'll get an email from there giving you the login information, and you'll get your own unique login. And you'll have access to most of the applications. We're not going to give you access to any of the administrative apps that could break our Maximo instance. But for the most part, you're probably going to see 95% of the Maximo modules that are available in 7.5. So if you want to try it out, feel free to make the request to our website. Or if you want a personalized demo, again, you can go to our website and there's a link to request a demo, and somebody will follow up with you on that. So obviously, 7.5, which is the newest release of Maximo, I'm going to call it 7.5X because there's some subsequent, fixes and updates on top of that. But for the most part, it's built on the latest technology. It is completely web-based. So there's, from top to bottom, the technology that we're dealing with is web-based. So you've got your graphical user interface, JSP pages and XML and HTML and all of that, Java, and some of the latest technology is constantly being developed within the releases of Maximo that are coming out. So just mainly for the version 5 users, if there's any on the call today, if you're a system administrator, I remember one of the things that was a little bit frustrating or cumbersome was the fact that you had to log into a separate administrative console in order to do system admin type activities within Maximo 5. So that went away. Now all of the administrative applications are part of core Maximo. So you sign in one place, and if through security, you're able to get to any of your system administration modules that you might need to work in. Maximo 7.5 supports global organizations and operations, meaning you can have multiple organizations set up within one instance of Maximo. And you can also have multiple sites, and you can have more than one site in an organization. So if you have, we have a demo database that we use a lot of times for training or demonstration purposes that IBM actually, they put this demo data together, but it's kind of a standard demo that comes with your install software. So if you ever want to play around, there's actually some demo data that you can play around with. But the way that they set it up in the demo is they've got North America is an organization, South America is a second organization, and then within those two organizations there's multiple locations in North America and South America. So you're able to break out your business units by orgs and sites. And the nice thing with, and this actually started with version 6, but the nice thing with this release is that it's easy to keep your information separated across the site. So I don't want, a worker in Cincinnati they don't need to see or touch, work orders that are in South America. So Maximo naturally keeps that information or data separated. But that's part of learning about, Maximo and how, as far as making the transition from whatever version you're on now to the latest version. One of the things you want to sit down with an expert, in Maximo and look at is what are these capabilities? What does it mean? So if I set up a PM schedules in Maximo now can be shared across organizations, sites, or across the entire enterprise if you want. But that's just one example of where that happens. So you've got to understand and have a good feel for what data can or cannot be shared, how can it be shared if it can, what impact does that have on our business, and how are we going to leverage some of these features and capabilities. And that's where the project manager or consultant can come in and help you with those decisions if it's something where you don't have the expertise on staff. It supports multi-language and time zones. So again, it is truly a global enterprise application. One of the new features, and I'm just pointing out a few, and these are really ones that I got excited about when they finally put these into Maximo. The PM forecasting is something that's been probably long overdue. But basically now in 7.5 you can take, I can look at a forecast for one PM schedule for one piece of equipment I can look out as far into the future as I want. So if I'm looking at a quarterly PM for air handler unit, for example, and if I know, the second time it's due to create a work order that we're going to have, we've got some downtime planned or, an outage or something where I'm not going to get to that PM. So I want to adjust that due date just for that one occurrence. I can do that now. I can actually see when it's due every quarter. And it kind of, Maximo creates a kind of like a table window showing me all of the times that it's going to generate. And I can change any of those dates without impacting the remaining schedule. And I can also use that for reporting. So if I want to run or print a PM forecast report, I can do that using this tool, and it's fairly easy. But that's something that we can take a deeper dive into with the new features webinar that will be, another follow-up to the series. But again, it's just something I think, in my experience, was a very nice enhancement. There's enhanced supply chain management capabilities, last in, first out, first in, first out with your inventory management. That was something that the user community was requesting, and IBM incorporated that into 7.5, as well as consignment inventory management. So basically, if that's a situation that you have in your organization, we can now manage that fairly seamlessly within Maximo, and those capabilities are part of the core solution. Also the capability to revise purchase orders, which is something that's been requested and now incorporated into 7.5. Along with some obvious new features, if you think about a new version, there's going to be better interface. There's also the capability, if you're a system admin or a system administrator, maybe part of your job responsibilities is to customize screens, if you will. So if we find that the users don't use certain fields on a screen, maybe in the work order application, or we need to add fields that aren't there in the core Maximo, you use some tools to do that. In 7.5, those are all native tools. So there's an application that you go into to make screen changes to Maximo 7.5. It's drag and drop, very user-friendly. You don't have to do anything special to activate the changes once you've saved them. So just, a lot of front-end tools that have been brought into the release that weren't there in the past. And the nice thing, too, about that is that, and I kind of skipped through that, the customizations that you make using the front-end tools that IBM gives you in this latest version of Maximo will upgrade with the new releases. So that's typically a concern that I hear from somebody on an old version thinking about upgrading. Well, we have all these customizations, and now we have to rewrite them. Well, unfortunately, you probably will have to rewrite some if you decide you need to keep them. Now, if it's a new feature in 7.5 that replaces that customization, then you don't need to, we don't need to recreate the customization after the upgrade. However, just knowing that, once you're at 7.5 going forward, any customizations you have made through these tools, these front-end tools, will upgrade. So that will save you time and money, obviously, at some point. And then enhancements and new features are being developed by IBM and made available in smaller releases as opposed to big bang new version releases. So, this kind of, what I've been talking through today sounds pretty painful, and it can be. But, once you get here to 7.5, the nice thing to know is that those releases, those enhancements are going to come in smaller packages and not be such an interruption to your day-to-day business. It's not going to require as much resources and money to implement those changes. Okay, so just wanted to show you kind of, this is a chart that shows you from 6.2 to 7.5, and I found this on the internet. The version feature comparison, and these are very high-level features, obviously, but in the webinar where we're going to go into, take the deeper dive into the new features of 7.5, we'll focus more on the specifics. But this is just a very high-level visual graph of, what components have been added in some of the more recent versions of Maximo. So some of the things I would want to point out, like you can have attached documents in old versions of Maximo, we call it linked documents, but attached documents can be attached at the task level. There's a, the full supply chain capability is in 7.5. Standard technology platform for, the entire suite of products with Maximo 7.5. This is one that I really like. As, somebody who taught end users how to use Maximo, the big thing with an application like Maximo is that, the users want to be able to get data out of there that's relevant to, their job. So if they're not super technical, writing custom or, complex reports are not typically something that they're able to do or have the expertise to do or the time to do. So one of the other new features in 7.5 that I really like is the ability to pull data out of Maximo through various means. So you could do a query on one of the Maximo user screens, for example, and you can export that result list to Excel. There's several other options I'll talk about here in just a moment. And I mentioned the PM forecasting earlier, and then asset templates. This was actually used to be just available with a calibration add-on, and now it's part of Core Maximo. So if you're not familiar with asset templates, what you can use it for is a way to create multiple assets, or otherwise known as equipment in the old versions of Maximo. But you can use one template to create multiple assets. So let's say that I wanted to, let's say I'm adding a new building into my Maximo system, so I want to get all my equipment loaded. I could create a template for the type of equipment it is. Let's say I've got 10 rooftop units for the building. So what I could do is create an asset template for the rooftop unit with all its attributes and common data, and then I can just basically, after I create the template, I tell Maximo to create 10 rooftop units, and I can identify each individual location or whatever if it's different. And basically in a couple of clicks, I can create 10 asset records as opposed to having to manually add 10 separate asset records to Maximo through the asset application. On the Maximo reporting side, if you're not familiar with this, for 7.5, and this actually came out with 7.1, BERT is the out-of-the-box reporting tool that is integrated within Maximo. So when you go to launch reports, the list that you see there, reports to choose from, assuming that these are all out-of-the-box reports, these are probably written in BERT. So BERT is an open-source reporting tool. It's now, I believe, owned by Actuate. But it has open source code, and you do have to be familiar with the source code if you want to be able to make complex modifications to the reports. But there is a report designer tool that's available for a download, I believe, from their website that you can use to modify the out-of-the-box reports if you choose to do so, or if you want to create new reports, you can use that reporting tool as well to create the new reports and then make them available within the Maximo applications. That's a little more complex. It's not a typical day-to-day end-user type of reporting tool. It's just more of a technical or system admin type of reporting tool as far as designing the reports. There are, I don't mention on the slide, but there are 150 or more BERT reports available out of the box in 7.5. In Projetech, and you could probably find it yourself too, but if after the webinar, well, actually, we'll just go ahead and post it on our webpage with the other upgrade resources. But there's a reports booklet, and it's a PDF file that has screenshots of all the Maximo 7.5 out-of-the-box reports. So you got a nice visual of what it looks like and what kind of data it's going to present in that report, and it groups it by application. So if you want to know what work order reports are available out of the box, you're going to see that in its own kind of chapter with a nice little description under the screen print of what it is and what it's showing you. So that's also part of your implementation process. When you decide that you want to upgrade, those are some of the things you want to be looking at is what are the out-of-the-box reports? Do we need to keep any custom reports that we might have built over the years from our old version? Or is there something fairly comparable in 7.5 out-of-the-box reports, or there's some other tools that we could use instead? So, part of that process is knowing and understanding what's available. The reports in 7.5 can be emailed as attachments. They can be attached as a PDF or Excel file, which is, I think, very useful. I might want to send a report to my boss, but my boss is not a Maximo user, so what I could do is run the report myself as a Maximo user, create the email from within Maximo, and attach the report with the data in it in either file format. There's also a query-based reporting tool, and again, we'll take a deeper dive in this with the follow-up webinar on the actual new features where we're going to go through the new features of Maximo and bring up Maximo 7.5. But the query-based reporting is, it came out in 7.1, I believe, but in 7.5 there were some really nice enhancements there. It's a lot easier to use. You can create your own reports on the fly, if you will. So if I'm in work order tracking and I do a query and I want to bring that data into a report, but maybe I want to group it by a certain location or group it by location and then filter it by, another location, then, I have the ability to do that using the ad hoc reporting tools right out of the front end of Maximo. So it's perfect for non-technical end users. They can build their own reports. The reports aren't, you can't do a lot of complex report writing with it because it is meant to be user-friendly, but it gives them some freedom to create their own reports without involving someone else or someone more technical to help them with that. Cognos is also an option. If you weren't aware, IBM acquired Cognos. It's another reporting tool. And there are a few out-of-the-box reports that IBM's created for use with Maximo and Cognos. Again, it's another reporting tool that you have to be familiar with, report design application for Cognos if you want to create your own Cognos reports or modify the existing ones that come with Maximo. But it tends to be, from what I understand and from what I hear from the community, it's a more user-friendly reporting tool than BERT, let's say. So it's just another option for building reports and allowing users, again, some freedom to build their own reports. And then those Cognos reports can actually be integrated within Maximo, which means when a user goes to the list of reports from an application, they can see a Cognos report in that list as well if we do the integration step. And it's not a big deal to integrate them. It's a couple of changes, I think, in a property setting somewhere, and then adding the report into Maximo through the report administrator. As I mentioned earlier, the query data results, so if a user does a query, let's say in work order tracking, for example, and they've got their list of data in that screen, and they want to download it into Excel, there will be a download button on the front end of that tab where they can easily bring all of that data from their query into Excel. So then, again, that's kind of giving them some freedom, and they're not so dependent on a technical resource to help them get data out of the software. And those things were not available in some of the earlier releases of Maximo. And then Key Performance Indicators is a new application within Maximo that came out with version 5, I believe, but it still had a little bit of, needed a little bit more work. But it's a pretty robust application now in 7.5 where, if somebody wants to put a visual on their Start Center, so as soon as they sign into Maximo, they see a Start Center now. And you can put different data on that Start Center depending on what is important to you. So if I'm a plant manager, I want to see what's going on within my plant. I can have key performance indicators around work order completion rates or downtime or things that are important to me that I want to see at a glance. So key performance indicators are a good way of doing that. It's another reporting tool, but it's more visual and it's more high level. It's more of a metric, if you will, as opposed to a list of data. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes left. So what I want to do is just close out, talk a little bit about, in light of all this information, you've probably, if you're on the call, you've been considering an upgrade, and more than likely. So one of the challenges that you might have is building the business case for your Maximo upgrade, and part of one of the reasons why we wanted to offer this webinar series is to help the community build the business case. So again, I'm just throwing out some things based on what I know, and then we're going to provide you with, the free resources and all that on our website. But if there are other pieces of information that you feel like would help you build your business case or anything else that we can help with, please, again, let us know and submit a request through info@projetech.com, and we'll try to make sure that we can, provide you with those necessary resources. So, using the resources provided with the webinar today, the upgrade toolkit that I referred to several times in the webinar will be available on the website. You'll get a follow-up email with the link to that web page. It is a work in progress, so we're going to put some things out there today that you can look at, and then as we go through the series or as we get your input, we will add to this. And again, these resources will be posted to our website frequently. So, if the information isn't there one day, check back frequently and see if we posted something that might be information that you've been waiting on or relevant. Participate in the follow-up webinars. Projetech, like I said, we're going to do some other webinars that we have planned are to take the deeper dive and look at 7.5 and new features. But also, another webinar on the actual upgrade steps. It will go into a little bit more detail in that webinar. But, those are just a couple that we've thought of at this point. If you have suggestions for other topics, please let us know. We'd be happy to entertain, the idea and see if it's something that we think would be useful. And there's also, if you search the internet, IBM has some recorded presentations on upgrades and things like that that might be helpful as well. Begin to develop your budget if you haven't already. You want to look at your timeline. So depending on what version you're going to be upgrading from, of course, it's going to impact all of this. What resources do you have available internally or externally? What partners do you work with or have you worked with? You want to involve them, or obviously, Projetech is also a Maximo partner. If you have any questions or are looking for some insight on, what our experience is as far as timeline and resources required for an upgrade, please feel free to reach out to us. In the future, I don't think it's available today, but we're going to be providing what we call kind of a cost analysis report. It's just a very high-level overview of what it would cost or what it looks like to support Maximo in-house. And then every couple of years or so, what it would look like to do, major upgrades, or, what the upgrade impact is while you're running your Maximo applications over, a long period of time. So we're going to try to provide kind of a, a comparison of cost, and that will be released fairly soon and available on our website. So hopefully you'll find that it's helpful in building your budget, and at least, even if you're just at this point just starting from square one and trying to come up with a, just a ballpark estimate, at least it'll hopefully help you, give you some of that, something to start with. And of course, being a Maximo cloud service provider, I've got to plug considering on-premise upgrade versus cloud solution. If that's something that you considered or not, there's certainly some potential cost savings in moving to a cloud solution or a Maximo service provider solution. And again, some of that information will be available on the Upgrade Toolkit webpage. And so in conclusion, and I see my animations haven't been working properly in my slideshow, but in conclusion, I just wanted to reiterate, the Internet Explorer 10 may be coming to your organization, I don't know, but just be aware that there are some incompatibility issues that can cause problems with your Maximo working properly. The D-support of older versions of Maximo, just to reiterate again, means no vendor support or fixes or new features. The latest versions of Maximo typically are written to work with the latest browsers or supporting software applications. So although 7.5.0.4 is not necessarily certified to work with IE10, my guess is that 0.5 will. So again, that's just another benefit of staying current with your Maximo version. So once you make that initial jump in your upgrade process, staying current from that point forward, it'll benefit your organization because you won't have to hopefully go through that, the pain of multiple steps or upgrades, major upgrades in the future. And we feel like some of the, there's so many new features in Maximo, and I did not even really touch on a lot of the key features. There's a lot of automation tools now in Maximo 7.5 that you didn't have in earlier versions. Email notifications are easy to set up. When a certain condition happens within Maximo, or somebody needs, to have a purchase order or a work order approved, for example, there are workflow functionality or modules built in Maximo 7.5. It's not an add-on; it's part of the core product, where we can force, records in Maximo to go through a workflow process, whether it's an approval process or just, the order of maybe there's different folks that need to be involved with a specific work order, such as the maintenance technicians and the inventory folks. And so depending on what your business processes are, we can a lot of times create a workflow to follow those processes within Maximo, so that you ensure that steps aren't getting skipped or approvals aren't being made that aren't authorized and things like that. So those are all part of the native core applications. And then, again, in conclusion, just continue building your business case. As I mentioned several times, you're going to get a follow-up email after this. It's going to contain a link to the upgrade resource page, and also you'll get a link to the recording of this webinar. So if you want to share the webinar with someone else or listen to it again, you'll have a link to the recording. And then our resource page on our website will contain the questions from today's webinar that we received through info@projetech.com. And if we'll try to get to the responses as quickly as we can. The future webinars I discussed, the 7.5 new features, and also the overview of upgrading Maximo. Just stay tuned for those. We haven't scheduled the dates yet, but we plan to hold those fairly soon. We don't want to, allow too much time in between the webinars. And again, please submit questions and any suggestions that you might have to info@projetech.com. We are on LinkedIn, Facebook. Obviously, our website is projetech.com. So I thank you for your time, and look forward to hearing some of your questions and getting your feedback. Thanks, everybody, and have a good day.